No, how do I put that on?
And you just have to touch it until you slow it.
Hey, does anyone know what time this event
Hello?
finished?
Jonathan, is that the Zoom at 8 o'clock? Okay. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We're very excited to have you all here for Brooklyn for Peace's event, for Sarah Schulman to talk about her newly released book, The Fantasy and the Necessity of Solidarity. Will be moderated by Karen Malpede. I will hand it off to Karen in a little bit, who will give a better introduction about Sarah. But first, we wanted to talk about Brooklyn for Peace and introduce myself. My name is Diana Suri. I'm the administrator for Brooklyn for Peace. And before we talk about a little bit about what we do, I do want to start off by grounding ourselves and taking a moment to acknowledge that we are gathering on the unceded land of the Lenape people, who stewarded this land for generations before being violently displaced. Let us honor their past, present, and enduring legacy and reflect on the layered histories of colonization, displacement, and migration that allow us to be here today. Since founding Brooklyn for Peace in 1984, so we're 40 years old at this point, we've worked to prevent war and address the injustices, whether if they were social, economic, environmental, or racial, that lead to violence and conflict. While our work is rooted in education, we know that education alone is not enough. Real change requires concrete actions. So we thank everybody for being here tonight, and if you've been a member of Brooklyn for Peace and you've supported us, whether if it's been financial or otherwise, we've been able to do our work for 40 years, and we're really grateful for all of your support in that. But tonight we also want to call on you guys to take action. So we want to turn what concern we have with the current situation domestically and globally and put it into action. And we have concrete ways that we want to motivate and encourage you guys to become more involved and, put action where, it's going to be impactful. Firstly, one thing you can do immediately, if you haven't yet, we do have a Gaza ceasefire and humanitarian aid petition. There's the paper petition right on the check-in table, but also there's a QR code. So if you have signed it, thank you. But if not yet, you have an opportunity to do so. The second thing we ask you all to do is get involved in whatever way you can, and you can do that with Brooklyn for Peace. Whether if it's joining one of our committee meetings, we have 3 active committees on Israel and Palestine, peace and economic justice, and a fundraising committee. So if you're interested, you can always flag me down and I can put you in touch with appropriate people. What else? There was something else, I know there was. The last thing is actually Saturday. So yes, help Brooklyn for Peace specifically in pushing our agenda for peace and justice, but also we have large rallies and marches that we're involved in too. So Saturday, as many of you probably know, there is the No Kings in New York march and rally against the Trump agenda. So please join us. We'll be marching in the Peace and Justice Contingency meeting at 1:30 on 41st Street and Madison Ave. All the information is posted on our social media, our website. You'll also probably be receiving a newsletter from us on Friday with all the details. So what I'm conveying to you guys is we do a lot and there's a lot of opportunity to get involved. And I think now is the time that we take the energy, take the concern we have and put it into action. So moving forward, we're grateful for our co-sponsors for today's event. The Peace and Social Action Committee of the Brooklyn Monthly Meeting. We'd like to thank them. We'd also like to thank the New York City War Resistors League, Peace Action New York State as well. We are very excited to be able to offer book sales of Sarah's book tonight. And we'd like to thank Books Are Magic for helping and selling those books. We'll do that after the book talk. And lastly, I'm going to hand it over to Karen. She'll introduce Sarah and tonight's program.
Thanks so much. Thanks, Diana. It's wonderful to see you all here for Sarah's reading and book talk. I think we need this. I think we need the book. I think we need these gatherings and these talks. So I hope after Sarah has read, I read the book, I got an advance copy, I read it right through going, yes, yes, wow, oh, I didn't know, oh, okay, I want to, stop and think about this. So, this is a time to really share our concerns and our need for the fantasy and the necessity of solidarity. I was at, before I introduce Sarah, who needs no introduction, but I'm going to introduce you anyway. I was at Bread and Puppet last week. Peter and Bread and Puppet have been doing the best art I've seen about Gaza since the genocide began. And I'm here to report that the young, the panorama of printmakers and puppeteers from around the world are well and sturdy and smart and kind and committed and brilliant, and the youth are okay. We just have to nurture them right along with us. At Bread and Puppet, they were teaching a little song of Brecht's set to music. I'm just going to read 2 verses of it for you. Black or white or brown or yellow, leave your old disputes behind. Once you start talking with your fellow sister, you'll soon be of one mind. Forward without forgetting where our strength can be seen now to be. When starving or when eating, forward not forgetting our solidarity. Sarah is an indefatigable artist, activist, novelist, playwright, nonfiction writer, supporter of many people in the village and around. She's just been on a massive book tour around the country, so I'm sure she might have things to say about that. And I'm just delighted to have her with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody, for coming. There's some very old friends here and some brand new friends. And some yoga teachers, apparently. I'm just going to read a little piece from the book. Okay, is this loud enough? Or, oh, you want to make it? No, this is good. Just a little bit higher. There we go. Thank you. Okay. The zone of interest. I'm reading my Twitter, now X. I have 2 frantic feeds, neither of which knows the other exists. One is the devoted multitude of posts about the Tony Awards of 2024, unfolding that evening on television. Counterposed is an international, multi-language, devastated, angry, desperate feed about ongoing shattering of lives and futures in Gaza. These 2 conversations and experiences never seem to meet. I keep checking the posts about the Tony Awards to see if anyone says anything concerning the world or even our own nation. Finally, one winner calls for more arts funding. He says it is a requirement for a civilized society. But a few months before, at the Oscars, it was a little different. The winner in the category of international feature film was The Zone of Interest, a co-production of the UK, Poland, and the United States. Now, on the surface, The Zone of Interest is a Holocaust film about the Nazi commandant of Auschwitz, whose family home, where he raised his children, shared a wall with the extermination camp he oversaw. The film never enters the camp. We see the smoke, we hear some sounds, but the point of view lies strictly with the Nazi family on this side of the wall. On this side of the wall, they have a swimming pool, while the invisible people on the other side have no food. The people on this side have luxury items. They give their children expensive presents. They tuck those children in, and their servants change their sheets. We never see the others, but we know they are being exterminated. Had the zone of interest functioned only on the level of this story I just described, it would have been an exquisitely executed retread of information we already know and are, in some ways, comfortably familiar with. But there is a unique experience to watching this film, that wall. After a while, as we watch, the past and present resonate, and then they begin to merge. But all the transformation takes place inside us, the viewers. The film's narrative stays in the past, but its meaning engulfs the present. That wall becomes the Israeli separation wall, where one side fills swimming pools, while on the other side, Palestinians have no water. One side controls the other while tucking their children into sleep in comfortable beds, and now that side is eliminating the other. The winner, director and writer Jonathan Glazer, then takes this moment of personal recognition and, almost trembling, not with happiness but with fear, makes the following statement, quote, "All our choices were made to reflect and confront us in the present. Not to say, look what they did then. Rather, look what we do now." Our film shows where dehumanization leads at its worst. It's shaped all of our past and present. Right now, we stand here as men who refute their Jewishness and the Holocaust being hijacked by an occupation which has led to conflict for so many innocent people. Whether the victims of October the 7th in Israel or the ongoing attack on Gaza, all the victims of this dehumanization, how do we resist? End quote. Now, in many ways, this is a modest statement. That the intense violence, murder, and cultural destruction that Jews experienced historically by Nazis produced the violence against Palestinians that Israel is committing today is a well-known interpretation of the cycle of violence, a frequent explanation of the current cataclysm that equates Israeli and Palestinian suffering. Glazer's work had already made this statement. He was not coming to the stage like many predecessors, winning for repetitive, familiar content, awkwardly squeezing in some unrelated political comment after thanking their agents. But I wondered if the people in the film industry who voted for him fully realized what the film was actually about, how intentional the dual meaning. Of course, he had to be punished for being one of the few public figures to speak the simple truth on American television, the truth that the entertainment and media industries had so studiously avoided that it sounded strange. That was March 10th, 2024. By March 18th, over 1,000 Jewish creatives and professionals signed their names to a public denunciation of Jonathan Glazer. They wrote, quote, "The use of words like occupation to describe an indigenous Jewish people defending a homeland that dates back thousands of years and has been recognized as a state by the United Nations distorts history," close quote. The United Nations does recognize the state of Israel, and it also recognizes that Israel has occupied Palestinian land. To quote from the UN official document, The Question of Palestine, quote, "In the 1967 war, Israel occupied the Gaza Strip, West Bank, and East Jerusalem," end quote. I was surprised that so many powerful and intelligent people's first objection was to Glazer stating the globally recognized and simple fact that Israel has militarily occupied land where Palestinians currently live or formerly live. It is irrefutable that Palestinians' lives are controlled by Israel and they are occupied. I would have expected the signers to justify that occupation, not to claim that it doesn't exist. Equally peculiar is that so many worldly and in many cases secular people would use biblical justification for Jewish dominance of land that is inhabited by more than one people. Yes, it is certainly true that there have been Arab Jews coexisting with Arab Muslims, Arab Christians, and Druze throughout different empires and collective histories. Jews were an integrated part of the Arab world before the current created false binary of Jews versus Arabs. 40 to 50% of Jews in Israel are of Arab origin, from a range of nations including Iraq, Yemen, Egypt, Morocco, and Palestine. And so Arab Jews were among the range of peoples indigenous to the region. But for over 1,000 people who have significant roles in the corporate creation of American arts and entertainment, to think that Jews are the only indigenous people to that area, or that European Jews are indigenous to the Middle East, simply doesn't make any sense. Their letter further stated that these 1,000 Jews believe that Glaser's statement, quote, gives credence to the modern blood libel that fuels a growing anti-Jewish hatred around the world, end quote. Now, blood libel is an anti-Semitic claim originating in the Middle Ages, falsely accusing Jews of vampirishly using the blood of Christian children to make Passover matzah. It is pretty crazy that so many people were willing to sign a letter interpreting Glaser's call for an end to using the Holocaust to justify murdering Palestinians as the same as him saying that Jews kill Christian children to make matzah. Medieval Jews, who were a vulnerable and often blamed minority, did not kill Christian children, but the 1,000 signers are betraying an unconscious association because Israelis with American money are killing children daily and in large numbers. I'm sitting in LA across the table from an old friend I love and respect. From a modest Jewish background, she has earned millions of dollars working in corporate television. She is so upset about Israel's violence in Gaza. She is devastated. She looks around to make sure no one in the restaurant can hear her criticize Israel. She won't sign anything. She won't say anything in public. It could hurt her professionally. And this is a common response I've heard from many people. They're afraid to say what they believe to be true because of the 1,000 people who signed their names and the thousands more who didn't sign but feel the same way. My feeling is that yes, doors will close, but those people don't control everything. Other doors will open. In some strange way, my silent friends believe the myth that Zionist Jews, punitive against other perspectives, control all the entertainment industries. I, on the other hand, do not believe that. Let's face it, if my friends were correct, you would not be reading this book right now, and it wouldn't have been published by Penguin Random House. It takes until April 5th to gather 500 signatures to a new document carefully titled Jewish Creatives Supporting Jonathan Glaser's Oscars Speech. Quote, we honor the Holocaust by saying, never again for anyone. We should be able to name Israel's apartheid and occupation without being accused of rewriting history. Some of the names on this letter include Deborah Winger, Todd Haynes, Chloe Feynman, Elliot Gould, Joaquin Phoenix, Joel Cohn, James Seamus, Ira Sachs, Wallace Shawn, Emma Seligman, Annie Baker, Molly Crabapple, Deborah Eisenberg, Nicole Eisenman, Nan Golden, Miranda July, Naomi Klein, Amy Silliman, Lynn Tillman, and me. Thank you. Ready? Okay. 1 second. Okay.
Thank you for getting to the heart of the matter immediately.
Right.
Yeah, and this is the question which I would like to ask you. We're both from various kinds of Jewish families. We both belong to Jewish Voices for Peace. Sarah is on the advisory committee of Jewish Voices for Peace. We've both been out in the streets, et cetera, et cetera. When One is out in the streets, and someone comes, say, as happened when we were in front of Schumer's house, and stops on their bicycle and begins to tremble and shake and scream at Jewish Voices for Peace, like the signers of the first letter that you. How do we address this? How do we understand this? What do you think?
Well, can I start way back and then build up to that? Okay, so, I mean, the purpose of this book and the reason I'm here is to try to make solidarity more doable. And my approach is to strip away any sense of heroism, perfection, or pure motive, because those things are impossible and they stop people from taking action. So, I think that what solidarity really is a process of making errors and being self-critical and adjusting and making change. The idea that we can just go in and be perfect and fix everything is really a supremacy thought, and it's not viable. So the idea started in a conversation I had with Vivian Gornick, actually, about what is solidarity. And she said, solidarity is when people in a horizontal position unite. And I was thinking, that's really out of date now, because the old idea was that you have the workers in the shop and you have the boss, and the workers organize and then they can win better working conditions. But now the boss is a globalized conglomerate. So sometimes horizontal solidarity is not enough, and you have to bring in other kinds of people. And the two communities that I think we rely on the most are bystanders. That's people who see the injustice, but they're not really implicated. And to get back to Jewish Voice for Peace, conflicted perpetrators, which is how I consider myself. People who come from the group that are committing the crimes and where it's being done in our names, and therefore we have to disrupt. So a lot of my thinking is focused on being effective. And this is because, I'm sorry, I'm just gonna, do you mind if I, okay.
Please.
A lot of what I've learned comes from my experience with ACT UP, and I just want to go back to that a little bit so you can understand where I'm coming from. So ACT UP was the AIDS Coalition to Unleash Power. This was the direct action wing of the AIDS activist movement at the height of the epidemic. And ACT UP was one of the most successful social movements of our time. I wrote a 600-page history of ACT UP New York, and Jim Hubbard and I interviewed 188 surviving members of ACT UP over 18 years. So I do feel like I understand what happened there, and also I was in ACT UP. My takeaway is that the reason they were so effective is because they did not operate on a consensus model. And this, I think, can help us. This is something we can learn. They had a bottom line. They had a one-line statement of unity, direct action to end the AIDS crisis. But within that, you could really do anything if it was in that rubric. So let's say you have an idea and I think it's terrible. I would yell and scream at you because that was ACT UP. It was very confrontational. But in the end, I wouldn't try to stop you from doing your idea. If I didn't like it, I just wouldn't do it. And then I would get my 5 people to do my idea. And this is radical democracy. Radical democracy is the embracing of difference with a bottom line. And because ACT UP functioned this way, they had so many different kinds of actions at so many different levels, using different aesthetics, different methodology, aimed at different milieu, that is actually what created the paradigm shift. The reason I think that worked is because movements that try to force everybody into agreeing on one analysis or one strategy have all failed, and there are no exceptions to that. And it's for a very basic reason, which is that people are different. And I know that's really hard to accept. And I've been in therapy for 40 years trying to accept that people are different. But trying to force people to be somewhere that they're not, people can only be where they're at. So real leadership is about helping people be effective where they're at. So that's my big answer to your very even bigger question.
Can we have some responses from the audience, questions or comments? Or we'll just continue talking? Yes. Yes, way in the back. Yes, sir.
He needs to.
Thank you, Diane. Karen. Sarah, that's spot on. The only movements that, can enforce some kind of consensus are Stalinists or some other. So the only answer is when the totalitarian kills everybody in opposition. But that's exactly right. There's a rubric, there's something that we understand, there's something going on here. We're all going to try to do something about it. We'll do it our own ways. So 5 people want to do guerrilla theater, another 5 want to write a book, another are going to knock on doors. More power to them.
Yeah, I mean, we're in a cataclysm of fascism, and it's not an easy fix, right? There's nothing that anyone can say that's going to make this all better. But on the other hand, every community is under attack. I mean, it's unreal. How many people are being affected? So like if you're from Salvador, you don't want to be kidnapped. If you're a Harvard professor, you don't want to lose your research money, you don't want your students to be arrested. There might be a tiny bit of overlap between those two groups, but not a lot. So you have groups of people who are really experiencing the world very differently, but their problems are being caused by the same forces. So asking the people that we need to work with to agree with us about everything is impossible. It's not practical. I've been thinking, for example, of this new pope, right? Everyone's felling over the new pope. He's anti-abortion, he's against gay people, but he's incredible on immigration. And that's a possible place of connection. Even if you hate the Catholic Church. It's just like, it's working with people when you agree and walking away when you don't. So I just want to, go ahead. Did you want to, yeah.
I live right over here in Crown Heights, and sometimes people ask me if I'm Jewish, and I say, no, but my God is Jewish. Jesus. I love Jesus. I'm Catholic, but Jesus was for peace. That's what I love.
Thank you. Oh, there's someone over there. There's someone over there, Karen.
Can everybody hear me? I hate using these things.
No, it's for the Zoom.
All right. I remember ACT UP. What worked for gays during the AIDS crisis was not ACT UP. It was the AIDS projects that germinated all over the country. I participated with AIDS Project Hartford, and there was AIDS Project New Haven, and you could go right across the nation. And there were thousands of AIDS Project groups, and in many instances, it was the first time that gays and straights met each other and were able to talk about it. It brought out the humanity of gay people, the humanism of the project, and that's what worked. ACT UP was a different kind of thing, and it was more a New York thing, actually, I think.
Actually, there were 148 chapters around the world.
Were there really?
Yeah.
Okay. But the thing that I'm concerned about is that in my old age, I've come to the conclusion there is absolutely no objectivity to history. It is so perspectival that all you can do is read as many books on a particular period, and then you have to independently decide where you think the truth is, because all the historians that you read are not going to tell you. There are 2 versions of Jewish history. The Jewish version says that Jews are completely innocent throughout their entire history, and they've been beleaguered by irrational anti-Semites from the time they were parameciums. The other version is the non-Jewish version that says that Jews were not so innocent. The Jews were blamed for the great inflation of 1923. The policy was adopted by the German upper class, both Jewish and non-Jewish, but it was facilitated by the Jewish bankers, and then the Jews ran banking. In the beginning of the 20th century, there was the Jewish people belonged to guilds to get working class people started to get an education.
But I have to interrupt you. Are you just going to lecture me about who the Jews are and who ACT UP is?
Yes, I am, because I think
Try to bring it to a close
I
here.
think you misread the history. And I think that my question is this. I think we have to find a way to bring people together the same way that AIDS projects brought people together to discuss all these issues. We just can't accept one version of the history and think that anybody who disagrees with that version is an anti-Semite.
Okay, well, let's talk about what is anti-Semitism, because maybe that's what you're getting at. So I'm a professor at Northwestern University. And what's happened, our school is somewhat in between. We have schools like Princeton and Yale where they are selling their bonds and they're saying fuck you to Trump and they're going to fund themselves. And then you have schools like Columbia who wanted to get rid of Palestine studies for years and have completely capitulated, right? And Northwestern is somewhere in between. But I will tell you that no one has ever been persecuted on my campus for being Jewish. Not one person. What's happening is that Zionist students who identify with Israel are being conditioned to believe that when other people show their sincere objection to the murder in Gaza, they are somehow threatening them. They feel threatened by this difference and by being asked to be self-critical. And organizations like Hillel, for example, which is on every campus, are encouraging them in this feeling. So you have this whole rhetoric of feeling unsafe, which is being encouraged by Zionist organizations. And then people they equate that with being a victim of starvation and mass murder in Gaza. It's very distorted thinking. Now, I'm the faculty advisor to Jewish Voice for Peace on my campus, and my students are incredible. And they're being disciplined, and they're being threatened with being expelled, and that's happening all over the country. I'm sure you've seen people who walked out of their Harvard graduation, valedictorian at NYU, had his diploma taken away. They don't care. What's really happening is students who have ethics, and I think they are the most ethical milieu in the country right now, because they're the ones who are most visible in their opposition to this war. They've come to a place where they no longer believe the bullshit about these elite institutions. And it reminds me of the anti-war period, the Vietnam War, where if they are going to be punished for telling the truth, a lot of them are willing to take that. And the fact that that's called anti-Semitism is because certain elements of the Zionist movement created this false concept that criticizing Israel equals anti-Semitism when it doesn't. And now they've lost control of that rhetoric. Because now you have Christian supremacists and Christian nationalists in the Republican Party, people like Virginia Fox, who's a born-again Baptist, or Elise Stefanik, who are manipulating this false claim that criticizing Israel is anti-Semitic for their larger purpose, which is to take down the American universities. So that's where we are in terms of, what is anti-Semitism. I am a very proud member of Jewish Voice for Peace. We now have 38,000 members, which is a hell of a lot for an anti-Zionist Jewish organization. And we just had our national conference, and there was a beautiful poster on the stage, and it said, Palestinian liberation, Judaism beyond Zionism, and justice for all. And that's where I stand.
Hi, Sarah. I'm Kat. It's magical and an honor to be here listening to you. I have two questions, but I'm not going to monopolize. You choose. Your choice. Number one, it's my understanding that ACT UP used media in a really powerful way, in a very in-your-face way as well. And I'm wondering about in this current moment, but especially as technology has so evolved and we know that our faces are being used, we're being tracked with GPS. I know, recommendations about buying a burner phone in cash, writing a phone number on your arm, etc. But any thoughts you might have, especially for those who are here listening online, in the wake of, or in the moment leading up to Saturday's marches, what thoughts you might have about media and safety in organizing and showing up in solidarity. And the second is, as a fellow artist, culture maker, is the limits and where you see possibility in culture making and art making in this moment, because it feels either really self-congratulatory or really insufficient and lacking. So that's just something I'm struggling with.
Okay, well, let's start with the first thing about safety. I think that solidarity can come with a cost. And the idea that you can just be involved in something and nothing's going to change in your life is probably, it's not a guarantee. So, you can lose access, for example, by standing up for Palestine. We see that all over the place. You can lose status. People are losing their jobs. Maura Finkelstein, a tenured professor at Muhlenberg, just lost her job because she was standing up for Palestine. People can lose their lives. But if we do nothing in this environment, all those things are going to happen anyway. Because the only thing we can control is our own integrity. That's it. So I think the idea of doing it safely is not really a possibility. I know we're all afraid that technology is controlling us and we have no say, but these incredible people in LA, we're all seeing them on TV, and they are inspiring actions all over the country. I mean, yesterday there were actions in 22 cities because they are somehow, their determination is being conveyed, even though the media is not necessarily on their side. Although if they keep shooting reporters with rubber bullets, the media will be more on their side. But I want to get back to your original thing about ACT UP and media, and maybe I could talk a little bit more about generally what I think is helps us be effective. Because interestingly, ACT UP's structure was very similar to Dr. King's structure. If you go back and reread Letter from Birmingham Jail, what he did, and also how ACT UP worked, is you start out and you become the expert on your issue. You design the solution. You don't become infantilized and beg the powers that be to fix it, because they're never going to fix it, they don't want to fix it, and they don't know how to fix it. So you figure out what's necessary. Then you bring your reasonable, winnable, and doable demand to the attention of the powers that be. That's when they say no. Then you do nonviolent civil disobedience to communicate through the media to the public. And that is what a campaign is. So just doing actions that are not tied to a demand is how you dissipate your energy. One of the things about the left is we do something and it doesn't work, and then we do it again exactly the same way. And it's like, if it doesn't work, don't do it again. And one of the things that doesn't work is standing in the rain, listening to speakers tell you something you already know. Like, that does not help us, but we do it over and over again. But having a demand that's winnable, for example, divestment. There's a Palestinian movement, the Boycott, Divestment, Sanctions movement. It was started in 2005. And one of the things is that they ask people to boycott Israeli state-sponsored institutions, and they ask for us to fight for the institutions that we're part of to divest from their holdings in Israel. Divestment is totally winnable. It was already won in the anti-apartheid South Africa campaign. In fact, that's one of the leaders of the Palestinian boycott movement, Omar Barghouti, was a graduate student at Columbia during the anti-apartheid movement, and that's where he got the tactic. So having a tactic that's winnable, and then building your actions towards driving your demand, that's how we move forward. That's what a campaign is. And just expressing is not always as effective as being focused. Our friends in LA who are so incredible, their demand is ICE out of LA. And I'm hoping that in our mayoral election, we're all going to be smart enough, don't rank Cuomo, to get a mayor who's going to say no to ICE. Though that's a winnable demand.
But we can individually vote, rank, yes.
I didn't endorse anyone. I just said don't rank Cuomo.
I was gonna make a joke, but I'm not funny. And I'm gonna try to organize these thoughts. There is standing in the rain, and then there's like mobilizing for action. I noticed with a lot of people I'm in community with, they have trouble discerning between the two. And I'm so sorry, my head's kind of gassed up. It's just kind of hard to communicate, like, telling through stories. Okay, so I got the Quaker meeting. People mobilize pretty effectively there, and I do work with teens in my community. For some reason, they are really good at just burning everything down. They're kids, so they wait for burning stuff down. And then I'm around a lot of my pocket of the adult trans community. I think a lot of people get caught up in shaggy dog stories and standing in the rain tactics. And I would love perspectives, if you have any, on like kind of, I don't know, persuasion or mobilizing people to kind of shift how they look at power or something like that. I don't know if that's a good question, but yeah.
Well, I don't think that necessarily works. You know, if you can attract by example, if you have a concrete thing and you can help people people don't think that they can win anything. But that's why having demands that are winnable, you have to have victories. It's a really important part of any movement, or you can't keep going forward. People should join movements because those movements make their lives better. One of the things we get from being in movements is community. You don't realize that that's you join it for other reasons, but then you're bonded with people. I see ACT UP people in the street. We don't even remember each other's names, and we probably spent the whole time screaming at each other when we were in it, but we're so bonded because we had the experience of being in a movement that actually worked, that actually won something. It is true, it is all being taken down right now. Many of the things that we won are being dissolved in this very moment. But for all of these decades, we did have a sense of having saved millions of lives, and that just creates these very deep relationships. But another thing is, in a moment like this where we can't win, we can't fix it, what we can do is build infrastructure for the future. Like if you look at groups like Students for Justice in Palestine or Jewish Voice for Peace, these organizations have been around for 30 years. For 3 decades, people have been building organizations. They have been publishing books. They've been developing a strategy, boycott, divestment, sanctions. They've been creating concepts, pinkwashing. So when these students stand up, they have a movement that they can fit into. They have books that they can read. They have concepts that are there for them. And even if we can't fix it, we can continue to build infrastructure. That's why, I just did this whole book, 20 cities in the US. It was really interesting to go around America talking about Palestine. But one of the things is, people are like, what should we do? And of course, I don't know the answer to that, but one suggestion I have is, if there's any organization that you can tolerate, join it. Whether it's your block association, Working Families Party, Jewish Voice for Peace, whatever it is. And if you hate everybody, get 2 friends and meet with them once a week in person and read the newspaper together. Because between the internet and COVID, we've lost a lot of personal relationships and community structures, and just rebuilding the infrastructure of that is really important for the next step.
See, someone who hasn't spoken yet, so.
Hello. I guess my thing to share is what I've been thinking about lately. I wonder if the current political structure and direction doesn't take power from coming to understand that the people who are striving to get these positions, either by getting through college or finding work in some way, I would even say like the soldiery down there in Los Angeles who are, so hardcore, is the idea. I think the idea is that the leadership has sensed a willingness on the part of people who strive, people who want to succeed, to let their conscience go silent a silent conscience, and that's how they'll get to the future. They don't want to be bothered about how they may basically be betraying their own humanity. But the thing is the further you go along that direction, I mean, my feeling, my idea is, you're not going to really find yourself amongst friends. You're going to find yourself in league with other of your fellow mortals who have given up on or let their own consciences grow silent. And this is the kind of characters you're going to be living next to before you know it, you know? I mean, what kind of society are we going to have? We're going to have a society of people who call these rotten radio talk shows at night, you know? You don't know where these guys are coming from talking about, I don't know, The Sopranos, this and that.
Thanks. Yeah, I think what we have and what Sarah is saying is we have each other. We have community, we have nonviolence, a very powerful tool, and we have winnable demands that seem hard to get to, but here we go.
Thank you. Sarah, what did you learn in traveling around the country speaking to people about Palestine?
I learned that people are really confused because they can't get clear information. And just showing that it's not complicated, that's one of the tricks. Oh, it's so complicated. It's not that complicated. Having that kind of clarity, I felt a lot of communication with audiences. You know, I had like huge audiences in some places, and then like in Louisville, Kentucky, I had 10 people, but they were all from DSA. You know, so they were so happy just to have somebody, because, you know, I mean, for me, I follow Palestine Twitter, and I follow Gaza on Twitter, and I look at Al Jazeera, and I read Electronic Intifada, and, you know, all of that. But if you can't pull that together, it's really hard to get basic information. I mean, the New York Times is a rat when it comes to Israel-Palestine, and MSNBC is like the Democratic Party Fox, you know, and it's just, and I think that's the main thing, is confusion.
Rose, you've spoken, so I'm going to pass you by this time. What?
Thank you. Oh, hi, my name is Brian. I have 2 comments. I work in finance, and for many years, Christians and Muslims still, they can't charge interest. It's not allowed. It's in the Bible. But Jewish people can. So Jewish people started banks, and it worked very well. And I help people start credit unions. Muslims are coming over I'm going to help them start a credit union tomorrow, because credit unions pay dividends, not interest, so there's legal for them. The other thing I wanted to say is, growing up in San Antonio, Texas, very military town, my parents, my pastor in the Catholic Church, and LBJ wanted to send me to Vietnam. I had nothing against the Vietnamese. They weren't hurting me. So I went off to Denmark instead with these wild ladies. It was peaceful.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Kimberly Cruz. I'm from Flushing Meeting, and I came pretty late, so I'm sorry. But I'm very happy that you're here and informing us. However, I want to ask where the primary sourcing of this modern movement is, where we have, starting from 2010, let's talk about the Arab Spring in 2011, it was Facebook. I'm 26 years old. I was one of the last people born in the 20th century, right? And then my brother was born in the 21st century, but after 9/11, right, in 2002. So those are 2 distinct groups of Gen Z when we're grouping the young, and then Gen Alpha and Beta and all that jazz that we have now that I have to protect. So my question to all the authors and primary sources that are going around the cities, and yes, during the Civil War, we need you. Rise, 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 and don't be scared. You have a whole crew over here supporting you. But My question always is, how do you know as an author that you're providing those solutions that are not putting citizens in danger? Because what I just heard was follow Twitter, and that is immediately, in my humblest opinion, in 2025, not the best thing to say when we are dying in resources in academia. My alma maters are being targeted, torn apart, careers with the friend at the other end that he was cut off. And I was listening just in awe that he's saying exactly what we all feel, is that if we're striving and if we're conscious and if we know that we are dying, how can we stand up and be protected if our elders are not informed about the civil wars that we are facing? I'm having an internal one because my phone is with me, not with my friend next door, not with my neighbor across the street, with me. I have a walking weapon with me, watching all of us, all at the same time, not as a Luddite. I hope we're like intellectually here and not thinking that I'm talking about destroy technology, but Y2K was a reason. It was like a movement, like you said, a movement that died after 9/11 and NATO was activated. Then we all started accepting technology as if it was our best friend. And now Gen Alpha and Beta have best friends that they're talking to as priests online with AI.
Okay.
So this is a long-winded question, like how?
Okay, I got you.
Yeah.
And I think I'm going to make this be the last thing that we can end on here. And thank you, everybody, for coming today. I think what you're raising is that, we're watching so many institutions just be torn to shreds. And it's very chaotic, and services are being taken away. Lots of people are losing their jobs and more. The whole structure is being undermined. But on the other hand, many of these institutions were dysfunctional and unjust in the first place. So we're in a situation where we're like mourning the demise of the FBI. We're talking about these private institutions. Maybe there shouldn't even be private universities. We're lamenting the fall of the NEA that barely ever served very many people. We're seeing, so this is an incredible opportunity for us to talk about what we really want. What kind of society do we really want? What do we think healthcare distribution should be like? What do we think it should be like to be an older person in this country? What do we think about the American theater? What could it be? So in this chaos, let's try to use this time to really talk with each other about what kind of world we want and how we're going to build it. All right, thank you all so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for being so clear and challenging to so many. And yes, let us think about what kind of world we really want and make community and solidarity and be inventive and creative and strong. Thank you, Sarah.
And if anyone wants to talk to me, I'm going to sign.
Yes.
Hang on,
You want to sign books here that people can buy? Okay. Sarah will be in the back. Okay.
We just want to make a
Bruce
quick wrap-up announcement from Bruce.
Okay, before you go, I'll only take a minute while I have your attention. Brooklyn for Peace is sponsoring this event. Many of you may not be familiar with the organization. And so I wanted to ask, we're a volunteer organization. We have one part-time employee, the wonderful Diana. And so it's hard for us to do our work without additional financing. We do have, when you get Sarah's book and signature or on your way out, if you can, don't make a donation of any amount. If you'd like to join Brooklyn for Peace, or if you'd like to make a donation, we have QR codes, and we would appreciate your doing this, so it'll help us put on more events like this, and also help us be active in support of things like a ceasefire, humanitarian aid in Gaza, and various other serious causes, and will allow us to lobby our legislators here in Brooklyn as well. So if you can do that, and also if you can sign up for our newsletter, which is free. We have no corporate sponsors. For your fear, we will not sell your name to anybody. Of course, nobody's buying our list anyway. So if you'd like to sign up for that, we send it out once a week. It'll fill you in on events. So thanks very much for coming. Get Sarah's book.
Thank you so much. Get a book, drop a buck in the donation can, and make solidarity and be well, work well, sit down in the street well, hang on to each other, and thank you for coming.